Hello and welcome. In this video, I will be discussing the 1536 Pilgrimage of Grace. The Pilgrimage of Grace was first of all very significant because it involved 30 to 40,000 people rebelling against the English government, and this was not something that happened ordinarily in the 16th century. In this video, we will cover the causes of the rebellion, what happened, as well as being supported by key sources and historians' opinions on the rebellion throughout. Between 1530 and 1536, Catholicism in England had suffered a number of body blows. The 1534 Act of Supremacy put Henry VIII as head of the Church in England rather than the Pope. The Catholic Catherine of Aragon was no longer the Queen, and there was a decided move towards Protestantism in Thomas Cranmer being made Archbishop of Canterbury and the Ten Articles being passed, which included a broader recognition of sola fide, the idea that faith alone could guarantee passage into heaven. Dickens sees the Reformation as led from below, while Eamon Duffy points to wills at the time showing substantial support for the Catholic Church in the money people left to it upon them dying. Such a move towards Protestantism was culturally out of sync with many in the North in particular, a largely Catholic region where many of the leading nobles were Catholics opposed to the Reformation. The trigger for the pilgrimage appears to have been specific types of interference in the North by the Crown. Henry VIII's representatives seized church goods such as jewellery in scenes similar to the dissolution of the monasteries. The Crown additionally passed the Statute of Uses, which involved the Crown receiving income for land use, thus pointing to economic as well as religious issues afront in 1536 that may have contributed to the rebellion taking place. Thus, the rising started in Lincolnshire, with commissioners sent to collect a financial subsidy being attacked. The rebels in Lincolnshire went on to occupy the city of Lincoln and demand an end to the dissolution of the monasteries and the removal of Protestant Crown advisor Thomas Cromwell and heretical bishops from positions of power in England. In Lincolnshire, the rebellion ended when reports came in that the Duke of Suffolk was preparing an army to suppress it, but it took on a life of its own in Yorkshire, where 30,000 rebelled. Shortly after the Lincolnshire rebellion collapsed, the rebels in York's demands emerged, and as in Lincolnshire, some were religious, some were political, while others were economic. They demanded the end of the Ten Articles, of heretical works, and of Thomas Cromwell. They wanted no more collecting of subsidies and an end to wealthy nobles enclosing land. There was a political wish to have a parliament at York or Nottingham as well. After lawyer Robert Ashe took a hold of the rebellion in York, the Pilgrims entered and occupied the city of York, and the Crown began negotiating with the Pilgrims. The Crown was represented by, among others, Thomas Howard, the third Duke of Norfolk, who himself was opposed to the rise of Protestantism. The rebels took Pontefract Castle, and their demands, known as the 24 Articles, were given to Norfolk to give to the king. Norfolk approved many of the demands, including for the abbeys to be left alone and a parliament in York to be created. He had no authority to approve these, which suggests tacit approval for the rebels from Norfolk, and corroborates historian G. E. Elton's view that this rebellion may have had tacit support from some nobles. Alternatively, they may have been agreed by Norfolk out of fear he would be massacred if he did not agree. It has additionally been suggested Norfolk could have simply ended the rebellion with his army, but chose not to. What is undeniable is that Norfolk was opposed to the Reformation, but still wanted to retain his influence at court. He therefore may have wanted to keep the rebellion going, without directly threatening Henry himself, as a means of having the anti-reformist cause heard. Not all rebels dispersed after Norfolk's concessions, however, and in early 1537 Bigot's rebellion emerged, led by Sir Francis Bigod. Aske had not authorised this. As it was obvious the king would not uphold Norfolk's concessions, Norfolk stopped this rebellion early and decisively with his army. The leading rebels, including Aske, were executed by the crown. The key points to remember from the Pilgrimage of Grace are: there was clear evidence of religious motives in the grievance list. Noble involvement and leadership was clear. There is a possibility that the nobles manipulated the grievance list. After all, many of the other rebels were illiterate. Opposition to national government advisers was clear in their demands. Rights for the church and rights for people to criticise the government without being at risk of being found guilty of treason was among the other demands, pointing to a politicised and empowered set of rebels starting to find their political voice. Historian Andy Wood notes that there was involvement from minor gentlemen and well-off farmers, and that it was not entirely noble-led. They had particular issues with increased taxation, rents, and noble encroachment on land. Thank you for listening. I hope this video gave you an insight into why the Pilgrimage of Grace was significant.